Look at that! Disgusting!
You look disgusting. Officer Ben Mills's words, sharp and cold, sliced through the cheerful October air, instantly silencing the sounds of laughter and mock screams. This wasn't part of the show. This was real. The Asheville Asylum, a beloved charity-haunted house, was supposed to be a place of community warmth. The air itself was nostalgic, crisp with the scent of fallen Blue Ridge mountain leaves and the sweet smell of hot apple cider. But Mills wasn't there for the community. He was there on a call, and with 12 years on the force, he prided himself on his gut feeling. It was an instinct he often boasted that let him smell trouble from a mile away. An instinct that had put real criminals behind bars. Tonight, that instinct was screaming. The 911 dispatch crackled with keywords that fueled his prejudice. Black female, zombie costume, harassing guests, possibly on narcotics. It painted a picture he already despised. And when he arrived, lights flashing, he saw exactly what he expected. Maya Thompson, a black woman in a tattered zombie doctor costume, her face a mask of fake blood and latex. He didn't investigate. He confronted. He went straight to the climax of the incident. His experience told him everything he needed to know. He didn't see a volunteer helping at a charity event. He saw trash. He saw an addict who was a threat to the good, decent families enjoying the holiday. Maya's absolute calmness, the professional way she tried to speak, only infuriated him more. It felt like defiance. "You think you're smart?" he growled, his voice low and threatening, his hand already moving toward his handcuffs. "I don't care what you have to say. You are getting in the car." His immediate, baseless aggression and unreasonable, hateful words sent a ripple of shock through the onlookers. The event manager, Deb, a kind woman in her 60s, rushed forward. "Officer, please, this is a terrible misunderstanding. She is..." Mills didn't even look at her. He cut her off with a vicious snarl. "You want to be arrested for obstruction, ma'am? Back off." The crowd gasped, but Mills didn't care about their outrage. He was on duty. He was the law. However, it was precisely this blind confidence in his gut. It was this deep, ugly vein of racial prejudice that was causing Officer Mills to make the most catastrophic mistake of his 12-year career. He had chosen the wrong target. Little did he know, the disgusting woman he was currently terrorizing, the addict he was about to cuff and humiliate in front of dozens of cameras, was in fact CSI supervisor Maya Thompson. She wasn't just a forensic expert. She was a living legend in the department. She was the meticulous professional Chief Robert Miller himself relied on to solve the state's most complex cases. Officer Ben Mills, drunk on his own small power, had no idea he had just publicly assaulted the one person holding the department's justice system together. He had just lit the match and thrown it onto his entire career. Officer Mills's patrol car screeched to a halt, its blue and red lights violating the warm orange glow of the Halloween decorations. He stormed out, leaving the car door open, a man on a mission. He saw the scene not as a community gathering, but as a problem to be handled. The nostalgic smell of hot apple cider and pumpkin spice was, to him, just the cloying scent of public disorder. Deb, the event manager, a kind woman in her 60s whose face was a roadmap of community service, rushed toward him, her hands raised in a placating gesture. "Officer, thank heavens," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I'm Deb Henderson, the manager. I believe there's been a terrible misunderstanding." Mills cut her off, his voice a sharp bark. "Where is she?" He didn't even make eye contact with Deb. His eyes were already scanning the crowd, hunting. The 911 call reported an aggressive suspect harassing guests. "I'm not here for a misunderstanding, ma'am. I'm here to make an arrest." His language, suspect, arrest, was a calculated escalation. He wasn't there to investigate. He was there to assert dominance. VO. And just like that, Mills had made his choice. He wasn't a peace officer, he was an enforcer. He didn't hear Deb's words. He was deafened by the facts he'd already created in his own mind. Addict, aggressive, black, female. "Officer, that is not what is happening." Deb pleaded, her worry turning to frustration. She was from Chief Miller's generation, a woman who still believed in community policing and mutual respect. This is a charity event. That suspect is one of my most trusted volunteers, Maya Tom. Mills finally looked at her, his eyes cold and dismissive. I don't care what her name is. He spotted her. Maya was standing quietly by the prop ambulance, her zombie doctor makeup looking grotesque under the flashing police lights. She was being debriefed by Leo, a college kid also in costume, who looked terrified. Mills pointed a sharp, accusatory gesture. That her? He began to stalk toward Maya, his boots heavy on the pavement. Deb, desperate, tried to walk with him. Officer, you are making a terrible mistake. That woman who called is lying. This is Maya. She's... Mills stopped, turned, and got so close to Deb's face that she flinched back, smelling the stale coffee on his breath. Ma'am, he said, his voice dropping to a low, threatening growl, you are interfering with a police investigation. You want me to add you to the report? Maybe you're also on something? Back. Off. Deb, a senior citizen, recoiled as if she'd been slapped. The crowd gasped. He had just threatened the event manager in front of everyone. This blatant disrespect for a community elder, this absolute refusal to listen, was the second nail in his coffin. He had dismissed the truth. He had threatened a witness. And now he turned his full, undivided, and prejudiced attention to Maya. He saw her standing there, calm and professional even in her zombie makeup. Her calmness, her lack of fear, seemed to infuriate him the most. He saw it as arrogance. He saw it as a challenge. He put his hand on his belt, his fingers resting near his handcuffs. Mills, ignoring Deb's attempts to explain, stalks toward Maya, his hand already near his belt. Let's see what we have here. Officer Mills now stood directly in front of Maya. The crowd, sensing the escalation, had gone quiet, creating a tense, unnatural arena lit by the flashing police lights. The smell of hot apple cider was replaced by the cold, metallic smell of Mills's police gear. Let's see what we have here, he said again, his voice a low sneer. He was invading her personal space, a classic intimidation tactic. He raked his eyes over her zombie doctor costume, the meticulous latex and fake blood, and his lip curled in genuine visceral disgust. He saw exactly what the 911 call had told him to see. An addict, a freak, a problem. He didn't see the 45-year-old CSI supervisor, the woman who had spent 2 decades meticulously collecting the evidence that put a man like him in a position to get promotions. He just saw the costume. VO. This was the moment, the one Maya Thompson knew so well from her professional life. The moment a situation branches, one path leads to de-escalation, the other to disaster. She chose her words with surgical precision. Officer, Maya began, her voice perfectly calm and measured. She held her hands up slightly, palms open and empty, the universal sign of non-aggression. My name is Maya Thompson. I am a volunteer at this charity event. The woman who called you is mistaken. I have not harassed anyone. Her professionalism, her complete lack of fear or subservience, was the worst possible thing she could have done. Mills expected a junkie to be hysterical or cowering or incoherent. This woman's calm, intelligent, and articulate response felt like a direct challenge to his authority. Oh, the victim is mistaken, is she? Mills scoffed, turning to play for the small, horrified crowd. So the addict in the monster mask is the one telling the truth? Is that the story you're going with? There it was. He had publicly labeled her an addict, a word loaded with prejudice, based on nothing but Susan's lie in her costume. This was the moment of pure, unadulterated fan no, outrage for the witnesses. That's not true, Leo, the college kid yelled. She didn't do anything. Mills ignored him. He was fixated on Maya. I've heard enough, Mills said, his patience snapping. He'd made his judgment in the car, and he was sticking to it. He jerked his thumb toward his patrol car. You're harassing people. You're causing a scene. You're coming with me. He reached out, his hand preparing to grab her arm. He was done talking. He was ready to use force. Maya didn't flinch. She didn't move. She simply stood her ground, her eyes locking with his. Maya stands her ground. "No," she says, her voice quiet but firm. "You're not listening. I am not coming with you." She's not resisting. She's correcting him. But Mills will not see the difference. The situation explodes as Maya's calm, professional attempt to de-escalate is interpreted by Mills as an act of defiance, triggering his rage. Maya's "no," spoken quietly but firmly, hangs in the air. It's a word Officer Mills is not used to hearing, especially not from someone who, in his mind, is at the very bottom of the social ladder. To him, it's not a correction. It's a challenge. It's the ultimate sign of disrespect. "What?" he whispers, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous growl. "Did you just say to me?" He takes a step closer, invading her space, his face flushed with anger. He expected a junkie to be hysterical or cowering. This woman's calm, intelligent, and articulate refusal feels like a personal attack on his authority. VO. There is a moment in every conflict where words fail, where logic and reason are drowned out by pure, blind rage. Officer Mills had just crossed that line. And for Maya, the CSI, a woman who lived by facts, she was about to learn that facts were useless here. "I said no," Maya repeats, her voice steady, though her heart is pounding. She's no longer a zombie doctor. She's a 20-year law enforcement veteran managing a volatile scene. "Officer, you are not listening to me. You have been given a false report. I have not harassed anyone. You can ask the 40 people right here." She gestures to the crowd, now a sea of cell phones, all recording. "You have no probable cause to detain me." The words "probable cause" are a match on gasoline. To Officer Mills, this isn't a citizen calmly stating her rights. It's the addict getting lippy. It confirms his bias. She's not only non-compliant, she's arrogant. He's furious that she, a creature in a mask, would dare to speak cop language to him. "Probable cause?" he scoffs, a humorless laugh escaping his lips. He's performing for the crowd now, trying to win back the authority he feels slipping away. "My probable cause is a 911 call for assault. My probable cause is that you look like you crawled out of a sewer." He lunges. It's a fast, unprofessional, and aggressive move. He doesn't try to arrest her. He tries to grab her. His hand clamps down on her upper arm, his fingers digging in, intending to drag her by force. It's an assault, not an arrest. Maya, an expert in self-defense and de-escalation, instinctively twists out of his clumsy, untrained grip. She doesn't fight, she doesn't push, she doesn't attack. She simply moves, using his own momentum against him, creating distance. She is now 2 feet further away, her hands held up again, palms open. "Officer," she says, her voice hard as steel now, all attempts at politeness gone. "Do not touch me." This single act of getting away from him, of her being more skilled, more controlled, is the final insult. His professional pride, already fragile, shatters. He sees her escape as the ultimate confirmation. He bellows for the benefit of the crowd, "You are resisting arrest." Officer Mills's accusation, "You are resisting arrest," rings false in the cold night air, and the crowd, which had been watching in stunned silence, erupts. They know what they saw. They saw an officer grab a woman without cause, and they saw her simply move away. "She is not resisting," a man yells from the back. "You attacked her." The chorus of truth begins, just as the downrusher D1 specified. Leo, the young college actor, his face pale with a mixture of fear and youthful indignation, steps forward, his hands shaking. "She didn't do anything, man. That lady who called 911 is lying. We all saw it. She just brushed her sleeve." Another woman, a local resident in her 50s, chimes in, her voice sharp. "He's right. This woman is a volunteer. This is insane. What is your badge number?" VO. It was the community itself, the very people Officer Mills was sworn to protect, rising up. They were the witnesses. They were the jury. And they were all delivering the same verdict. Mills was wrong. But in his world, a world fueled by prejudice, wrong was not an option. This wall of defiance, this chorus of witnesses, corners Officer Mills. He's been challenged by Maya, defied by the crowd, and now he's being questioned by everyone. He's being filmed by 40 phones. He has two choices. He can de-escalate, listen and do his job, or he can double down. He chooses to double down. His anger turns from Maya to the crowd. "All of you, back up!" he bellows, putting his hand on his pepper spray, a threat to the entire group. "This is an active police scene. You are all interfering with an investigation." This threat silences them momentarily, but their phones remain up, recording. He has just drawn a line in the sand. It's him against all of them. Deb, the event manager, steps forward again, her own phone held high, recording. She is no longer pleading. She is angry. "Officer Mills," she says, her voice steady, "I am the property manager. I am officially on record asking you to leave. You are trespassing. You are harassing my staff, and you are ignoring credible witnesses. We have 10 high-definition security cameras on this patio. You are being recorded by us too." The threat of official footage, of cameras he can't dismiss as civilian, should have been the final warning. Instead, it's the final insult. He is being challenged by everyone. He turns back to Maya, his eyes now cold and dead. All the hot rage has burned away, leaving something worse. A cold, calculated decision. He will not be beaten by this zombie and her mob. The mention of 10 high-definition security cameras, of official evidence, makes Officer Mills flinch. He knows he's crossed a line, and now he knows it's documented. But instead of backing down, his humiliation curdles into a cold, desperate rage. He is trapped, and he blames the person who trapped him. Maya. He turns his full attention back to her, ignoring Deb, ignoring the crowd. He sees her standing there, still calm, still professional, her hands still visible. Her very composure is, to him, an admission of guilt, a sign of arrogant defiance. He needs to end this. He needs to be the one who wins. VO. But Maya wasn't pleading for herself. She was pleading for him. She knew the steps. She knew the law. She knew that every second he was digging his own professional grave, a grave that was now being recorded in high definition. But he was too blind, too arrogant to see it. "Officer," Maya tries one last time, her voice firm, trying to appeal to the procedure she knows he's supposed to follow. "Please, just take a breath. Look around you. This is not a crime scene. This is a community party. Don't do this." Her plea for peace, her logical request for him to simply observe his surroundings is, to his twisted logic, the final provocation. She is lecturing him. The addict is telling him how to do his job. "You're right," Mills says, his voice suddenly quiet, a terrifying calm that precedes a storm. "It's not a party anymore. It's an arrest." He unclips his handcuffs, the snick-snick sound of the metal teeth cutting through the air. "This is your last chance," he says to Maya, his voice low and menacing. "Turn around, put your hands behind your back, or I will put you on the ground." This is the moment. Maya challenges him, not with force, but with the law. "For what crime?" she asks, her voice sharp. "You still have not named a crime. Looking disgusting is not a crime. Probable cause requires a..." The legal term, the correct term she uses, is the final trigger. He explodes. "Shut up!" he roars, his face turning a deep, mottled red. "You think you're smart, don't you? You think you're some kind of lawyer? Citing probable cause at me?" He shoves her. It's not a small push. It's a hard, two-handed, violent shove to the chest. Maya, caught completely off guard by the sheer, unprofessional brutality of the act, stumbles backward. She trips over a low, fake prop tombstone part of the Halloween decorations and lands hard on the cold pavement. A collective, horrified gasp erupts from the crowd. "He pushed her!" "Oh my God!" Maya lands heavily on her side, her zombie doctor scrubs now scraping against the real dirt and gravel of the parking lot. She looks up, stunned, not just by the fall, but by the sheer, unbelievable stupidity of his action. He has just assaulted her, on 10 security cameras, and in front of 40 cell phones. Mills stands over her, breathing heavily, his eyes wild. He sees her on the ground, and in his mind, he sees his victory. He has subdued the threat. Mills pulls out his handcuffs. "I've got all the probable cause I need. It's called assault on a peace officer and resisting arrest. Turn around, now! The sickening pop of a shoulder dislocating, followed by a racist, hateful sneer. You like touching people? Let's see how you like touching a cell. This was the moment Officer Mills fulfilled his threat. He stood over Maya, who was stunned on the pavement, her zombie doctor costume now covered in real dirt. Turn around now, he had roared. He didn't wait for her to comply. He was done. His authority had been questioned, and now he would demonstrate his power. The crowd, horrified by the push, was screaming. Deb, the manager, was shouting, I'm calling the chief! I'm calling 911 on you! But this all just faded into white noise, fueling Mills's rage. He saw Maya trying to push herself up onto her elbows, still gasping from the fall. I am not resisting, she managed to say. I am, VO. He had just fulfilled his promise. He had put her on the ground. And in his mind, he now had to justify the assault. The only way to justify assaulting a suspect was to prove they were resisting arrest. He was no longer an officer. He was a criminal, desperately trying to build his alibi. Shut your mouth, Mills screamed. He dropped onto one knee, his full weight landing on Maya's back. He grabbed her left arm and violently yanked it behind her back in a brutally improper chicken wing maneuver. Maya cried out, a sharp gasp of pain. He's hurting her, Leo screamed, trying to run forward, but two other actors, seeing the look in Mills' eyes, held him back. Don't, Leo! He's crazy! He'll arrest you too! Mills, ignoring the screams, focused on her free arm. Give me your other arm, he roared, trying to grab her right hand. Maya, in pain, instinctively tried to protect her arm, which was tangled in her prop clipboard. Stop, she cried. You're hurting me. You don't have to. Her plea for basic decency was the final trigger. I'll show you hurting, he grunted. He grabbed her right arm. But he didn't just pull it back. In a move of pure, malicious, and unnecessary force, a pain compliance technique explicitly forbidden in training, he bent her wrist forward and violently twisted her entire arm at the shoulder, attempting to force her submission. And then it happened. A sickening, wet pop echoed through the night. It wasn't a loud crack, but a deep tearing sound, a sound of cartilage ripping, a sound that was caught by 40 different cell phone microphones. Maya screamed. It was not a haunted house scream. It was a raw, agonizing, bone-deep cry of pure, unadulterated pain. Her body, which had been tense, went completely limp. Her head hit the pavement as the shock overloaded her system. The crowd fell into a stunned, horrified silence. Even Mills froze for a split second. He knew that sound. It was the sound of an unrecoverable error. The sickening pop of Maya's shoulder had done Mills's work for him. She was no longer resisting. She was a crumpled heap on the pavement, barely conscious, a low keen of agony escaping her lips. The crowd, which had been screaming, was now stunned into a horrified silence. They had just witnessed a police officer permanently injure a woman in front of them. Officer Mills, for a split second, was frozen. He knew that sound. He knew he had gone too far. He knew he was, as the law called it, beyond the pale. But that flicker of panic was immediately extinguished by a surge of self-preservation. He couldn't go back. He couldn't apologize. He couldn't stop. To stop now would be to admit guilt. He had to finish the arrest. He had to justify the injury. VO. This was the moment of no return, the moment an officer becomes a criminal. He had just broken a woman's shoulder. Now he had to prove she deserved it. His panic turned to venom, a desperate attempt to paint his victim as the aggressor. That's what you get, he spat, his voice shaking, not with fear, but with a forced, performative rage. You want to fight, huh? He grabbed her dislocated arm, the dislocated one, and brutally forced it behind her back. Maya shrieked again, a sound so profound and agonizing that several people in the crowd physically winced and looked away. Oh my God, stop! Deb screamed, tears streaming down her face. You're killing her. Mills ignored it. He grabbed her good left arm, pulled it back to meet the ruined right one, and cinched the handcuffs. Click, click, click. The sound of the metal ratcheting tight, biting into the skin of her wrists, one of which was attached to a shoulder joint that was no longer in its socket. He'd done it. He'd cuffed her. He stood up, breathing heavily, and hauled Maya to her feet. He didn't pull her up gently. He yanked her up by the chain of the handcuffs, which in turn pulled her full, dead weight onto her destroyed shoulder. She screamed and her knees buckled, but he held her up, forcing her to stand, sobbing, a pathetic, broken figure. He had to cement his narrative. He leaned in close, his face next to hers, his voice a low, venomous whisper, for her ears only, the words that would haunt him forever. This was the line from T1. Trong mai kin tom nu, mot kon nung hien, he sneered in English. You look disgusting, just like an addict. He had finally said it, the core of his prejudice, the justification for his brutality. He had decided she was an addict the moment he got the call, and he had just proven it to himself. Officer Mills straightened up after delivering his private, venomous insult. He had his suspect cuffed, subdued, and broken. Now he needed to perform for his audience, the 40 cell phones still recording his every move, the witnesses to his brutality. He needed to create the official, public narrative for his report, a justification for the violence he had just committed. He roughly grabbed Maya by her cuffed arms, yanking her again, forcing another cry of pain. He began to drag her toward his patrol car, his face a mask of righteous fury. He shouted, projecting for the crowd, using the very accusation Susan had fabricated, the one he had chosen to believe. "You like touching other people so much?" he boomed, his voice dripping with contempt. "Huh? You like putting your hands on folks? Well, let's see how you like touching a cell in the drunk tank." VO. He had done it. He had completed his own twisted narrative. In his mind, she wasn't a volunteer, a professional, or even a person. She was a thing that liked to touch people, and he was the hero who had stopped her. He had turned justice completely upside down to satisfy his own prejudice. He dragged the weeping, stumbling Maya across the parking lot. The crowd, no longer silent, followed, a horrified, angry procession. "Monster!" a man screamed. "You're a pig! We got you on camera! Your badge number! We've got it!" Mills ignored them. He was in too deep. He just needed to get her in the car, get her away from the lights, away from the cameras, away from the witnesses. Deb, the manager, was standing near the curb, her own phone pressed to her ear, tears streaming down her face as she spoke to 911 dispatch. "Yes, I am reporting an officer, badge number 214. He has broken her arm. Oh my God, yes, I need Chief Miller. Get Chief Miller down here now." Mills heard this. He heard his badge number shouted. He heard the name Chief Miller. And for the first time, a flicker of real cold fear entered his eyes. He fumbled with his car's back door, his hands suddenly clumsy. He just needed to go. "Get in the car," he yelled, trying to shove Maya into the back seat. But it was physically impossible. She was a sobbing wreck, her body locked in pain, her shoulder dislocated. She couldn't bend. I can't," Maya sobbed. My arm, I can't." "I said get in the sea." "Mills!" The voice wasn't a yell. It was a roar. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated, ice-cold authority that sliced through the night, cutting through the sobs, the insults, and the radio static. It was a voice that Officer Ben Mills knew as well as his own. He froze. His hand was still on Maya's back. He turned, his face, which had been red with rage, instantly draining to a sheet white. Pushing his way through the crowd, his 60-year-old face a mask of cold fury, was Chief Robert Miller. He was in his community policing uniform. He had heard Deb's frantic call over the radio, and he had arrived. "Mills, what in God's name do you think you're doing?" The pop of the shoulder in the last chapter is replaced by the sound of a stunned silence, as Officer Mills's entire world collapses with the arrival of a single respected man. Chief Robert Miller's question, "What in God's name do you think you're doing?" hangs in the freezing October air. Officer Ben Mills, who just seconds before had been a raging bull, is now a statue. His hand, still pressed against Maya's back, freezes. He turns, his face, which had been red with rage, instantly draining to a sheet white. He looks like a child caught setting a fire. "Sir," he stammers. "Chief, I didn't see you. I have the situation under control. This individual was assaulting guests and resisted arrest." VO. But Chief Miller wasn't looking at him. He was looking past him. Miller, a man in his 60s, was from an older school of policing, a school built on community, trust, and above all, respect. And he had just seen all three of those values set on fire by one of his own men. Chief Miller completely ignores Mills's pathetic justification. His eyes scan the scene with a practiced, decades-old calm. The horrified crowd, the 40 cell phone still recording, Deb weeping, and finally the figure cuffed against the car. He steps past Mills, his shoulder brushing him aside as if he were a piece of furniture, and peers into the face of the zombie. He looks past the latex, past the fake blood, past the dirt, and his eyes. They widen. His cold fury, the fury of a boss, instantly melts away, replaced by something far more powerful. Profound paternal concern. He recognizes the eyes. "Maya?" he whispers, his voice breaking. It's not a question. It's a statement of disbelief. "Oh, dear God! Maya, is that your shoulder?" Maya, still sobbing from the pain, looks up. The recognition in her chief's eyes, the sheer humanity in his voice gives her a spark of life. He popped it, Chief," she gasps, the words barely audible. He wouldn't listen. He wouldn't listen." Miller hears this. He visibly recoils, as if he's been punched. He wouldn't listen. Miller turns his head, his gaze falling on Mills. Mills looks like he's seen a ghost. His brain is frantically trying to process the impossible. "Maya? Chief? Maya?" The words don't compute. Get those cuffs off her," Miller commands, his voice shaking with a rage so deep, so cold, it's almost quiet. "Now, Mills, and you do it gently, or so help me God." Officer Mills, who had been a swaggering titan of authority just moments before, was now a trembling mess. Yes, sir," he stammered. He fumbled for his handcuff key, but his hands were shaking so violently he couldn't get it into the lock. The pathetic clink, clink, clink of metal failing to connect was the only sound in the tense silence. He was shaking, not just from fear, but from the frantic, impossible calculations firing in his brain. Maya? The chief knows her name? He still couldn't process it. His fumbling, his incompetence, was a public admission of guilt, a complete unraveling in front of everyone. VO. Sometimes the collapse of a bully isn't a loud explosion. It's the pathetic, trembling failure of his own two hands. Mills had just lost his greatest weapon, not his gun, but his arrogant, intimidating facade. Chief Miller had no patience left. "Give me the key," he roared. He snatched the keys from Mills's fumbling hand, shoving the larger officer aside as if he were a mannequin. Miller then knelt. He was no longer the chief. He was a colleague, a protector. "I'm so sorry, Maya," he said, his voice astonishingly gentle. His strong, 60-year-old hands expertly slid the key into the lock, careful not to jostle her ruined shoulder. "We're getting you to the hospital." The click of the cuffs springing open was the loudest sound in the lot, a clear signal of liberation. Thank you, Chief," Maya gasped, cradling her dislocated arm to her chest. Mills, seeing his authority so publicly stripped, became desperate. He backed away, trying to build his defense. "Sir, I had a 911 call, a report of an assault. She was resisting. She looks like..." Miller stood up. He turned, his body rigid, and faced Mills, and he exploded. It was not the hot, sloppy rage of Mills, but the cold, hard fury of a glacier. "She looks like what, officer?" Miller demanded, his voice dangerously low. "An addict? A freak? A piece of trash?" Mills froze. He had heard him. He had heard the abuse. VO. And there it was, the twist. The truth that Mills had refused to listen to, now delivered by the highest authority in the city. Miller turned to the crowd, his voice booming across the parking lot, ensuring every cell phone captured it. He pointed a shaking finger at Mills, then gestured to Maya. "For all of you, this officer," he said, the word officer sounding like a curse, "has just assaulted one of the finest law enforcement professionals in this state. This isn't an addict, you idiot. This is CSI Supervisor Maya Thompson." A collective, audible gasp erupted from the crowd. The name CSI supervisor Maya Thompson meant something in this town. She was the quiet professional, the one whose name appeared in the papers only when a major case was solved. Leo's and Deb's jaws dropped. They had been working alongside a local legend. And across the lot, Susan Price, the accuser, who had been watching the drama with a smug look, went pale. She began to backpedal, trying to melt into the shadows. But all eyes were on Officer Ben Mills. He was, as the Don Rush D1 specified, Chet Lang. He was frozen solid. His mouth hung open, but no sound came out. His mind was flashing, replaying the last 20 minutes in horrifying, vivid color. "You look disgusting. Addict. You like touching people?" He had said these things to Maya Thompson. The Maya Thompson, the one who trained officers in evidence collection, the one whose expert testimony sent people to prison for life, the one whose meticulous work was the gold standard. VO. It was a silence so complete, you could hear a leaf fall from 100 yards away. It was the sound of a man's entire professional world, his arrogance, his prejudice, and his career evaporating all at once. But Chief Miller wasn't finished. He wasn't just angry. He was personally, professionally insulted. He stepped right into Mills's personal space, nose to nose with the taller man who was now trembling like a leaf. And the chief shouted, not with rage, but with the cold, hard fury of a commander whose mission had been betrayed. "She's not just any CSI, you idiot," he roared for every camera to hear. "She is the lead. She is the only person in a 3-county radius who can process the forensic evidence from the triple homicide case you've been reading about in the paper. The case we are all depending on. You didn't just assault an officer, you jeopardized the biggest investigation in the state." This was the final hammer blow. Mills hadn't just been a bully. He had, through his own stupidity, become an active threat to public safety. "Sir," Mills's voice was a pathetic, strangled whisper. He had no defense. There was no defense. "Don't, sir, me." Chief Miller held up a hand, silencing him. "You are relieved of duty, effective immediately." Miller looked past Mills, his eyes scanning the crowd until he found the other officer who had just arrived on the scene, Sergeant Evans. "Sergeant," he barked, "disarm this man." Mills flinched, the humiliation absolute. "Here, sir," he whispered, pleading. "In front of—" "Right here," Miller said, his voice like flint. "In front of the 40 people you just terrorized. Give me your badge and your weapon." Mills, his hands shaking so violently he could barely unclip them, fumbled with his belt. The sound of his Velcro radio clip ripping open was obscenely loud in the silence. Mills, Chet Lang, watches as Chief Miller, in an ultimate sign of respect, gently helps Maya to his own car, as if escorting a VIP, not a criminal. In the cold light of the hospital, the full extent of the damage, physical and professional, becomes painfully clear. The sterile fluorescent brightness of the Mission Hospital emergency room was a jarring contrast to the chaotic, flashing red and blue lights of the parking lot. Maya Thompson sat on an examination table, the tattered remains of her zombie doctor costume cut away by a nurse. Her face, now wiped clean of latex and fake blood, was pale and etched with a deep, throbbing pain. She was looking at an X-ray on a light screen, her professional, analytical gaze assessing the damage to her own body. The doctor, a man who recognized her from her decades of work in the department, pointed with a pen. "Well, Supervisor Thompson," he said grimly. He did a real number on it. "It's a severe anterior dislocation." He pointed to another, smaller shadow on the bone. "And worse, he used so much rotational force that he actually caused a small fracture on the humerus head. This is not a simple pop. This is significant, malicious force. VO. The damage was done. The physical cost was immediate. A broken bone, a dislocated joint, and weeks, if not months, of painful physical therapy. The very tools of her trade, her steady hands, her meticulous eye, her unwavering patience were, for now, useless. An entire city's justice system relied on those hands to find the truth, and they had been broken by one of their own. "I can reduce it, pop it back into place right now," the doctor continued, his voice gentle, trying to soften the blow. "But the fracture, That's going to require surgery. Pins. You'll be in a hard sling for at least 6 to 8 weeks. I'm sorry, Maya, but it's no lab work. No microscopes. No lifting an evidence kit heavier than a coffee cup. Maya closed her eyes, the frustration of far more profound pain than the white-hot agony in her shoulder. The triple homicide case, the one Miller had mentioned, was on her desk. The DNA evidence was at a critical, contamination-sensitive stage. Her team was good, but this specific case required her level of experience. And now, because of one man's blind, stupid, thuggish prejudice, she was benched. Justice for 3 dead victims was now in jeopardy. In the hallway, she could hear Chief Miller's voice, low and furious, pacing back and forth on his cell phone, his words echoing in the quiet ER. "I don't care what his union rep says," Miller growled, his voice carrying clearly. "He assaulted a supervisor on 40 different cameras. This isn't a training issue. This is a criminal act. Yes, internal affairs and the State Bureau. I want his badge pulled. I want him reviewed for criminal charges, and I want it done by morning. This is a civil rights nightmare, and I will not have it in my department. He is a liability we can no longer afford." He was managing the political and legal fallout, but Maya was left alone in the sterile room, grappling with the physical, personal, and professional cost of one man's hate. Back at the asylum, the chaotic energy of the confrontation had been replaced by a cold, procedural silence. The crowd, sensing the show was over, had mostly dispersed, leaving only the key witnesses, Deb, Leo, and a few others, who were now giving statements to a uniformed officer. The flashing red and blue lights of Mills's patrol car, once a symbol of his aggression, now just illuminated his humiliation. Sergeant Carla Evans, a woman in her 50s with a no-nonsense demeanor and 25 years on the force, was now in charge. She had methodically completed the task Chief Miller had given her. She had taken Mill's service weapon, his radio, his handcuffs, and his badge, securing each in separate evidence bags. Officer Ben Mills was no longer an officer. He was just a man in a uniform, sitting on the cold curb, head in his hands, disarmed and defeated. VO. It took less than 30 minutes for Officer Mills to go from enforcer to pariah. He had broken the first and most sacred rule of the Blue Brotherhood. He had, through his own prejudice, attacked one of his own. And in doing so, he had lost the shield that had protected him for 12 years. Sergeant Evans, her face unreadable, looked at the weeping accuser, Susan Price, who was trying to slip away toward the parking lot exit. "Ma'am!" Evans's voice was not a yell like Mills's. It was a sharp, clear command that stopped Susan in her tracks. "Stop! Right there!" Susan froze, then turned, trying to muster her earlier indignation, but it came out as a pathetic, shaky whine. "Me? Officer, I was the one who was attacked. I'm the victim here. I'm leaving." Evans walked right up to her, her boots crunching on the gravel, her notepad already out. "You're the 911 caller?" "Yes," Susan said, her voice rising. That creature, she grabbed me. She assaulted me." Sergeant Evans didn't even blink. "That creature is CSI Supervisor Maya Thompson of this department," Evans said, her voice like steel. "And we have," she glanced at her notes from talking to Deb, "approximately 41 cell phone videos, plus the event's own internal high-definition security footage, that show she never got within 3 feet of you." Susan's face instantly crumpled. The blood drained from it. I didn't mean, it was just a Halloween prank. She looked what?" Evans cut her off, her voice cold. "Filing a false police report is not a prank, Ms. Price. Your prank just contributed to the aggravated assault of a law enforcement officer and the potential destruction of a state-level homicide case." Susan began to tremble. I want a lawyer." "You will most certainly need one," Evans said, scribbling on her pad, "because you are no longer a witness. You are a primary suspect in filing a false 911 report and inciting an assault. I'll need your ID. You are not going anywhere." Sergeant Evans pocketed her notebook, leaving Susan Price to tremble by the side of her car, her night of entitled malice now turning into a legal nightmare. Evans walked back over to Ben Mills, who was still sitting on the cold curb, a pathetic, disarmed figure. He had watched the entire exchange with Susan. He looked up as Evans approached, his eyes desperate, pleading. He was searching for an escape route, a way to shift the blame from his actions to the catalyst. Carla, he muttered, using her first name in a desperate plea for collegiality. She lied. You heard her. The 911 call was false. It was a setup. I was set up. VO. It was the last desperate gamble of a guilty man to blame the lie rather than his decision to believe it. Sergeant Evans looked down at him, not with pity, but with a profound, weary sadness. Her 25 years on the force had shown her every kind of mistake, but this was a special kind of self-destruction. She lied, Ben, Evans said, her voice flat and devoid of emotion. She absolutely lied, and she will answer for that. She paused, letting a beat of silence hang in the air. But you believed her. You believed her in less than 30 seconds, against all available evidence. She gestured to Deb and Leo, who were finishing their own statements nearby. You didn't listen to Deb, who has run this event for 20 years. You didn't listen to the 40 witnesses telling you the truth. You didn't listen to Maya. You heard a lie that matched the prejudice you already had in your head, and you ran with it. This isn't on Susan, Ben. This is on you. Mills flinched as if she had struck him. The cold, simple logic was more devastating than any shout. He had no defense. He had been so sure of his gut, his instinct, and she had just exposed it as nothing more than raw, ugly prejudice. He put his head back in his hands, defeated. Evans' radio crackled. Sergeant, the CSI transport is 2 minutes out. Evans keyed her mic. 10:04. The scene is secure. She looked back down at Mills. He would have to be processed like any other suspect in an assault case. She needed to tell him what was happening next. You'll need to stay right here, she said, her voice now purely procedural. Mills looked up, confused. Stay here? Aren't you taking me in? I'm not, Evans said. Chief's orders. This scene needs to be processed by the book, and since it involves an officer-involved assault, her team is handling it. Mills's blood ran cold. Her team? Yes, Evans said, her face grim. Supervisor Thompson's team is on its way. They're coming to process the scene. They'll be taking photographs of your injuries. And Ms. Price's, and of course, Maya's. They'll be processing you. A month later, 2 careers are on the line in a sterile internal affairs room. One will be ended, the other will be redefined, but not in the way anyone expects. The room was wood-paneled, impersonal, and smelled faintly of old coffee and floor wax. It was an internal affairs hearing room, a place where careers came to die. At one end of the long, polished table sat Ben Mills. He had lost weight. His face was gaunt, his eyes hollow. His usual aggressive energy was gone, replaced by the limp, defeated posture of a broken man. He was wearing an ill-fitting suit that looked like it hadn't been worn in years. At the other end of the table sat Chief Robert Miller, Sergeant Evans, and a stern-looking internal affairs officer who was presiding over the hearing. VO. In the weeks following the incident, the story had exploded. The 41 cell phone videos, including the one with the sickening pop, had gone viral. Officer Mills was not just a local problem, he was a national symbol of prejudice and police brutality. And sitting at the side, her presence dominating the room despite her quiet, was Maya Thompson. Her right arm was no longer in a bulky medical sling, but in a sleek, professional black one. She wasn't in uniform. She was wearing a crisp, dark blue pantsuit. She was the picture of professionalism, her face calm and unreadable. She was here as the primary victim. The IA officer adjusted his glasses and read from a thick file. Officer Mills, we have reviewed the 41 civilian videos, the 3 internal security tapes, the 911 call from Ms. Susan Price, who is, I'll note, facing charges of her own in your own body-worn camera footage. He paused, looking up over his glasses. The evidence of aggravated assault, battery, gross professional misconduct, and violation of civil rights is, frankly, overwhelming. Do you have anything to say for yourself before the board renders its decision? Mills, his hands trembling in his lap, looked up. He didn't look at the IA officer. He didn't look at Chief Miller. He looked, for the first time, directly at Maya. His voice was hoarse, a dry whisper. "Supervisor Thompson? Maya," he began, his voice cracking. I, I can't explain it. I can't. I, I was, I was wrong." He swallowed, tears welling in his eyes. "What I said, what I did, there is, there is no apology for it. I am, I am sorry. I am so sorry for your shoulder, for what I did. I was blind." Maya just looked at him, her gaze steady, unwavering, offering nothing. She just listened. The IA officer sighed, unmoved. "The board's recommendation is unanimous. Termination of employment, effective immediately." Mills closed his eyes. It was over. Ben Mills closed his eyes, waiting for the final blow. His 12-year career was over, finished in a stuffy conference room, but the internal affairs officer cleared his throat. "However," he said, looking at his file, "Supervisor Thompson has, as the primary victim in this matter, requested to speak and to offer a counter-recommendation." Mills's eyes snapped open. He stared at Maya, utterly bewildered. Chief Miller looked equally surprised. Maya gently placed her own file on the table. She wasn't looking at Mills. She was addressing the board, her chief. VO. This was the moment of true justice. It wasn't about punishment. It was about wisdom. Maya understood something the board didn't. A problem, simply cut away, will only grow back somewhere else. "Firing him is easy," Maya said, her voice quiet but carrying absolute authority in the silent room. "It's what everyone expects. It's clean. We throw him out and we say problem solved. But it doesn't solve anything." She paused, letting her words land. "He just becomes someone else's problem. He becomes a security guard at a mall or a cop in another small town, and he is still the same man. The man who saw an addict and not a volunteer, the man who chose violence over listening." She turned, and for the first time she locked eyes with Mills. Her gaze wasn't angry. It was cold, analytical, like she was looking at a piece of evidence under a microscope. "I don't want him fired," she said. Miller and the IA officer stared, stunned. Mills looked like he couldn't breathe. "I want him educated," Maya stated. "I am recommending, in lieu of termination, a 1-year unpaid suspension." She flipped a page in her file. "During that year, he must complete, on his own dime, 100 hours of de-escalation training, 100 hours of implicit bias training." She slid a small USB flash drive across the table. "And he has to write a report, a 50-page second-by-second analysis. On this drive are all 41 civilian videos, the 3 internal security tapes, and his own body-worn camera footage." She looked directly at Mills. "He will sit in a room and watch that entire night on a loop. He will analyze every second he made the wrong choice, from the moment he stepped out of his car, to the moment he called me an addict, to the moment he dislocated my shoulder." She leaned forward. "And I will be the one who grades it. If he passes, he can come back, as a rookie, on probation. If he fails, he's gone forever." It was a punishment far more devastating, brilliant, and educational than simply firing him. The scene fades from the shocked faces in the hearing room. We are now 3 months later. The setting is a police training facility in a padded gymnasium designed for de-escalation simulations. Ben Mills is in the middle of the room. He's not in a police uniform. He's in a simple blue trainee polo shirt and tactical pants. He's sweating, exhausted, and about 10 pounds lighter. An actor, playing a highly agitated subject, is screaming in his face, "I ain't talking to you. You ain't listening. You're just like all the others, man." Mills, who 3 months ago would have responded with force, takes a deep, conscious breath. He takes a mandatory step back, creating distance. VO. Justice isn't always about a closed door. Sometimes it's about a very narrow, very difficult path forward. A path paved not with vengeance, but with accountability. A trainer, watching from the sideline, yells, "What are your options, Mills? Talk to me. De-escalate." Mills keeps his hands low and visible, his voice steady. "Sir, I understand you're angry," Mills says, his voice projecting calm. "I am listening. I hear you. Tell me what's wrong. Tell me what you need." The trainer, impressed, makes a check mark on his clipboard. It's a small step, but it's a profound change. Mills is learning, finally, to listen. The scene cuts one last time to the quiet, familiar sanctity of the forensics lab. The lights are low. Maya Thompson is back at her desk, peering into her microscope. Her arm is out of the sling. She is slowly, carefully, rotating her right wrist, a small, persistent grimace on her face. The physical therapy is ongoing. The injury will always be with her, but she is back. She is whole. On her desk, next to her keyboard, sits a thick, spiral-bound 50-page report. On the cover in sharp red ink is a single, hard-earned word: pass. VO. In life, we are all in costume. Some, like Maya, wear a zombie's mask for an evening of fun. Others, like Mills, wear a mask of prejudice they have mistaken for a uniform. The lesson, as Maya knew, was simple, one that had been taught for centuries but so often forgotten. Don't judge a book by its cover. Maya takes a sip of her coffee, her eyes never leaving the evidence under her microscope. She turns a dial, focusing in, and gets back to work. Our story began on a warm community Halloween night, but it quickly transformed into a profound lesson on the dangers of prejudice. We witnessed an officer, blinded by a zombie costume and racial bias, abuse his power against a woman he saw as an underdog, never knowing she was the silent pillar of justice he was sworn to protect. The moment CSI supervisor Maya's identity was revealed brought immediate justice, but the true victory lay in the final lesson. Instead of choosing revenge, Maya chose education. Instead of punishment, she chose grace. It remains a powerful, timeless reminder that a person's worth is never defined by their outward appearance, and that respect is something every single person deserves.